For those of us working to change behavior that harms our partner and our relationships, understanding the source of our actions helps us find the solution. It might not be obvious at first, but many people discover when they dig into it that fear is a root cause of domestic violence or abuse. Hi, I'm Michael Clark with the Ananias Foundation, and in this video, I'm going to talk about the impact fear has on how we respond to all kinds of situations. We'll cover how we may be overreacting to many of those situations because of our own unfounded fear. If you want to stop causing harm in your relationships, you're on the right path. This is Journey of Change, a video series to help you become the safe, loving partner you were meant to be. Here's what we know about human behavior. When we act out in a hurtful way, it's often because we're trying to protect ourselves. And when we look at those times, frequently we discover our self-protection was unnecessary. We're excessively or irrationally reacting to something because of our fear. So, to change and stop acting out in harmful ways, we must look past our actions and ask ourselves, am I reacting because there's something that I'm afraid of? Now, the tough guy part of me wants to say, there's nothing that I'm afraid of. The reality is, however, fear can play a huge role in how I react, and it probably does for you too. My focus here is not on rational fears that make us act prudently, like stepping carefully when we're walking on the edge of a cliff. It's also not on phobias, like fear of spiders. The fears I'm talking about are those that are deep down into our psyche, the ones we might not even know we have. Here are some examples of those kinds of fears. Fear of failure. Many of us are afraid to fail, whether it's in a game or a contest, a project at school or work, our career, or as a parent. Fear of loss. We're programmed to feel loss as pain, so we try to avoid it at all costs. We may be afraid of losing a relationship, our health, money, or status. Fear of missing out, also known as FOMO. We've all wondered if the grass may indeed be greener on the other side. We may be afraid of missing out on a job, the last item on a shelf, or something else we feel we deserve and that others are getting instead. Fear of looking bad. This is a natural fear that comes to us as social animals that evolved to live in groups. Being judged as weak or incompetent or stupid or awkward feels deep down like we're going to be cast out of the tribe. Fear of being left out. Related to the last one I mentioned, most of us are afraid of not fitting in or being rejected in some way, whether by a group or an individual. Again, we're probably wired this way to be afraid of facing the world alone. Fear of not being liked or loved. Here's another deep-seated fear that relates to the fear of being alone. It's really a threat our sense of worthiness has. If someone does not like or love us, we fear it means we are not worthy of love. Fear of being powerless. When we are in control, we generally feel safe. But when we don't have control or are under someone else's control, anything could happen, or so we fear. This can make us scared of not getting our way, not having a say in decisions, or not being respected by our partner. Fear of change and the unknown. We tend to resist change, often because we're scared that when our world shifts, will end up failing, losing, missing out, looking bad, being left out, being rejected, or being powerless in that new normal. These fears often affect us in overlapping ways. For example, people who are scared of failure are often also scared of looking bad and the loss and rejection that might come with that failure. Let me sum these all up for us. Beneath our fear is one big fear that we are not enough. You may be wondering, what does all of this have to do with domestic violence or abuse? When we look at what's behind our angry reactions and worst behavior, we often find one or more of these fears. Here's how this works. Our fears usually have their roots in events from our past, especially our childhood, that were painful, scary, or out of control. Because we didn't yet have the emotional skills to navigate these situations, we developed behaviors that helped us cope at the time. However, these responses don't serve us well as adults. Here are some examples. If a child gets caught in the middle of their parents' messy divorce, they might become very clingy. This is because deep down, they're afraid of losing their family and ending up alone. Hence, a fear is created. Here's another example. If the parents rarely show affection or approval, their child may be driven to become perfectionists to try to gain their parents' love. Again, a fear is created. I must perform well to be loved. Here's a third example. Let's say a child experiences a turbulent home environment with constant change. Those conditions might teach the child that getting their way is the only way to feel safe and in control of their lives. These upsetting and scary events have the effect of wiring our brains for a certain reaction as a coping method. Over time, they become habits and end up feeling normal to us. Unfortunately, these patterns can come out in damaging ways later in life when we no longer need to protect ourselves. The clingy child might resort to controlling behavior as an adult to avoid their fear of loss and loneliness. A kid who never got approval from their parents might struggle to receive criticism from their spouse. They may lash out to stop that criticism because they interpret criticism as saying they're unlovable, and they fear that it may be true. The child who needed to get their way to feel safe might not back down from an argument, even if that means using force, because they fear their lives will spin out of control again if they don't. These behaviors don't come from a healthy place, and they certainly don't get us to one. They create anxiety and inner turmoil that holds us back from getting the good things in life. And they cause conflict that damages our relationships and hurts our loved ones. So what can we do to address the fears that lie beneath our bad behavior? The good news is that even our most deeply ingrained fears can be eliminated, or at least reduced to a more manageable size. Here are some thought processes and techniques that can help us break through our fear and stop them from holding us back. First, name your fear. It's impossible to address something without first knowing what it is, and our innermost fears are no different. Identify what your fears are and bring them out into the open by writing about them in a journal. Better yet, talk through them with somebody that you trust and feel safe with, like a counselor, a pastor, or a mentor. By exposing our fears like this, we immediately take away some of their power and start on the path to overcoming them. Otherwise, they stay hidden and continue to plague us. Second, challenge the thought that creates the fear. A lot of our fears are irrational. Once we identify our fears, we can ask ourselves, do they really make sense? Are they really true? Many of our fears, even the powerful ones behind our bad behavior, are products of distorted thinking. They're not rational. One example of distorted thinking is believing that we must be right all the time. Another is thinking that the worst is always going to happen. Still another is seeing things as black and white, all good or all bad. By challenging the truth of these thoughts, we can overcome some of our deepest fears. If our thinking is false, then there's no need to hold on to the fear. My partner is about to make a bad decision and I have to stop him or her, or it will be awful, is a distorted thought. After challenging, our thought may become, what they're doing looks foolish to me, but I could be wrong, and it won't be the end of the world either way. Challenging and changing our thought removes a lot of the pressure we feel to correct or control our significant other. A third thought process that will help us reduce or eliminate a fear is to face it. Psychologists sometimes use a method called prolonged exposure therapy to help us face a fear. Essentially, this is when we force ourselves to be exposed to whatever we're afraid of. Putting ourselves in a room with spiders can help us get over our fear of them. Typically, this is done gradually. We may start off looking at a picture of a spider, then work up to seeing a spider in a terrarium before we try to handle one or sit in a room crawling with them. Let's say you're afraid of being alone. You might force yourself to not date anyone for a year. Or if rejection scares you, try putting yourself in situations where you're likely to be rejected, say by asking to borrow $100 from a total stranger. It's unlikely that the worst case outcome, our fear, will come true. Okay, fourth, think about caring less. Even if our fear does have some truth to it, we can often reduce its impact simply by learning to care less. A lot of the things we're afraid of are never as important as we think they are. For example, if you're scared of being judged by others, try caring less about what others think of you. Advice columnist Ann Landers wrote, "At age 20, we worry about what others think of us. At age 40, we don't care what they think of us. At age 60, we discover they haven't been thinking of us at all." Even if they don't like you, does it really matter? What others think doesn't change who you really are. Fifth, accept your fear. Sometimes our fears are real and they do come true, but we can still thrive and live with them without letting them overwhelm us. Let me give you 3 examples of how accepting a fear can help us feel much less stressed and act in ways that will improve our life. Let's say that you've identified that you fear failure. You're worried about what it says about you when you don't live up to expectations. But failure is a part of life. Everybody fails sometimes. Instead of beating yourself up over past failures or obsessing over some possible future failure, accept that failure happens. Forgive yourself for the past ones and embrace the future ones, knowing they will be opportunities to learn and grow. Okay, second example. Perhaps you fear losing control. It's normal to want to be in the driver's seat. But the truth is, control is an illusion. There is very little in this life that we can control, and attempting to do so often lands us in trouble. Accepting that we're not going to be able to fully control our surroundings is empowering. Third example, maybe you fear change. Change, like failure and things happening beyond our control, is inevitable. And despite our fear and resistance, humans are built to not just cope with change, but to thrive in it. Even if the change is not what we want, we tend to underestimate our ability to heal, grow, and adapt to new conditions. Fear is an inevitable part of being human, but irrational fear does not have to rule our lives or drive bad behavior. By naming, challenging, facing, caring less, or accepting these fears, we can reduce or eliminate their power. I'm Michael Clark with the Ananias Foundation, and I hope you found this discussion about how fear and how it creates bad behavior to be helpful. Take care, and I'll see you in another video. Thanks for joining me today. I'm honored to be on this journey of change with you, and I hope I've helped you in some way. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. We'd love to hear from you. Also, be sure to hit the like button, share this with others who might find it helpful, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of our future videos. For more resources, head to our website, ananiasfoundation.org. Until next time, take care and remember, change is possible.